The second Vice President of the International Criminal Court, Judge Kuno Tafuse, has responded on behalf of the ICC presidency to a letter from the chairpersons of the African Union and the African Union Commission. The letter addressed various aspects of the ongoing ICC proceedings involving Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto. Tafuse says, quote, "The presidency has no legal powers to consider arguments and concerns related to ongoing cases, and that such matters should be raised before the relevant chambers." Judge Tafuse also stressed that the judge of the court must take all their decisions in accordance with the mandate and legal framework established by the states that created the court, including the 34 African states that are party to the Rome Statute. Meanwhile, on October 13th, the heads of state and government from the African Union are expected to come together for what's described as an emergency summit. High on the agenda for this special summit is the continent's relations with the International Criminal Court. CCTV's Grim Chala has more.
According to the African Union Secretariat here in Addis Ababa, it's likely that an emergency summit will be held at the level of the heads of states in mid-October. During the meeting, the leaders from the continent are expected to discuss in depth the issue of the International Criminal Court. And according to some political analysts, the African Union leaders are expected to take a common stance on whether to join Kenya's planned pullout from Rome statutes from the prosecution of their leaders in the International Criminal Court. As part of the road to this summit, foreign affairs ministers from member states under the African Union are expected also to meet and draft the agenda for the higher level meeting before the leaders come on the scene. Once the emergency summit materializes, the heads of states and governments are expected to make one of the biggest decisions in the history of the Union, possibly a general consensus to leave the Rome Statutes in mass. The African Union as a continental organization is not a member of the ICC. Grumjala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
South Africa is regarded as one of the most violent countries in the world. It has a murder rate 4 times higher than the world's average. Now, according to the South African Minister of Police, the number of murders has just increased for the first time in 6 years. Clementine Logan has more.
It's estimated that close to 45 people are killed in South Africa each day. According to new crime statistics released by South Africa's Minister of Police, levels of violent crime stabilized in 2013. But for the first time in 6 years, the number of murders increased by 0.6% in the past financial year. That amounts to more than 16,000 deaths. Nevertheless, Nathi Mthethwa remains optimistic.
Contrary to what some skeptics may affirm, the journey we have traversed thus far gives us confidence that we shall reach our goal of a society that is free from crime, a society that attracts investments, and a society that cares.
For some, however, violence remains part and parcel of daily life. In the township of Manenberg, drug-related gang violence has long been a problem. It's forced 16 schools to temporarily shut down, with 12,000 children kept at home for 2 days.
When they're shooting, sometimes I hear, but sometimes I make my ears close.
In July, there was a total of 31 shootings in just 1 week. A heavy police presence has since been set up, with safety corridors around schools to protect students from the violence.
For instance, the school that we're in at the moment, if they walk out the front gate, they are confronted with a gang to the left and a gang to the right, opposing gangs shooting at each other.
Outside the school walls, children are well versed in how to survive.
You can't even scout your friend to go play with her.
You must lay on the ground in the house, under the bed. If you hear the shot outside, you must run.
The shootings may have died down for the moment in Manenberg, but many feel there's little hope this fragile security will last long. And this township is just one of many where violence is witnessed nearly on a daily basis. A sign perhaps that South Africa's law enforcers have some way to go before reaching the level of a crime-free society. Clementine Logan, CCTV.
Well, it's time now for AfricaLive to take a quick break. When we come back, not at ease, scores killed as Boko Haram strikes Nigeria's Borno state.
We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
The need for trade and justice.
Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world.
Welcome back. Now, South Africa is making significant strides in fighting the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and its efforts are being recognized globally. The United Nations AIDS program recently praised the country for bringing down the rate of new infections to 0.8%. That's down from 1.4%. The number of people dying of HIV and AIDS has dropped significantly as a result of treatment. CCTV's Sumitra Naidu reports.
Scotland's was originally a home for orphan children when it opened 77 years ago. Back in the late 90s, South Africa was hard hit by the HIV/AIDS pandemic. Pregnant mothers were passing on the disease to their unborn babies. Scotland's decided to open a hospice for the babies in 1996. But because of political opposition, it had to look for sponsors to buy anti-AIDS drugs. This limited the number of babies that received treatment. In 2003, 87 babies died at the hospice. Sister Kitiwe recalls that painful period.
During that time, there were so many children who were here, very, very old children. You know, it was a matter of life and death during that time.
Scotland's is no longer the sad place it used to be, thanks to the government's rollout of antiretroviral treatment. The Department of Health officially started the rollout of ARVs in 2004. Patients showed improvement almost immediately.
Just over 10 years ago, the number of people dying of HIV and AIDS-related diseases was extremely high. Today, that number has dropped significantly, largely as a result of improved education and government's rollout of antiretroviral treatment.
Especially amongst babies. Scotland's announced earlier this year that it was officially closing down the hospice.
In the last 3 years, we didn't have one death related to HIV and AIDS. So sort of last year we realized, you know, we probably don't need the hospice anymore. And, you know, we dreamt of that.
Scotland's is now redirecting funds into educating and caring for communities. It runs classes for young children and has opened a toy library. Government, meanwhile, is improving its rollout of ARVs. It recently announced the 1 pill a day for people living with HIV and AIDS.
There were people who will take about 9 tablets a day, 3 tablets 3 times a day, or 2 tablets twice a day, etc. Now they only have to take 1 tablet once a day. 1. If you take it in the morning, you take it and go to work. We were spending 313 South African rands per patient per month. 313. Now we are spending only 89.
The rollout of 1 ARV a day has already begun. The new pill is cheaper and has less side effects too. Sumitra Naidu, CCTV, Johannesburg.
We stay in South Africa, and investigations into the Marikana mine shooting in August last year, which saw 34 miners killed. The Commission of Inquiry has revealed discrepancies in the police's account of events. Police say they acted in self-defense just days after 2 officers were killed by protesters. However, 10 days after gaining access to police computer hard drives and previously unseen police documents, the Commission says police falsified or withheld documents and gave false accounts of events. The hearing's been adjourned until Wednesday to allow the Commission to scroll through thousands of pages of documents and seek additional information. The government's been criticised for its handling of the crisis, with not a single policeman arrested over the shootings. Well, let's get more on that now from Cohen Lebone, crime analyst with the South African Institute of Race Relations. Mr. Lebone, welcome to Africa Live. Now, a pretty damning report by the Marikana Commission. What does this do for the credibility of South Africa's police?
Well, it's going to dent people's confidence into the police even more, because we've seen from reports, especially the Victims of Crime Survey report that came out last year, published by Stats SA, that households and individuals in the country have little trust in the police. It's over 40% of households that have no trust in the police. This will make it even worse, the Marikana report coming out yesterday. And also, predictably, from many organizations, independent organizations and opposition political parties, do not really believe, do not have trust in the police anymore. And this will make it worse. Like I say, people will have even less trust in the police due to this incident.
All right, Mr. Lebone, now looking at a report that's just come out, also casting the spotlight on the police, indicates a spike in crime, especially statistics on murder. We're looking at an increase at house robberies, at hijackings, attempted murders. And as you'd mentioned, 40% of households don't have faith in the police. What is the government and what are police doing wrong?
Well, with murders, you really cannot fault the police alone, because murder is something that happens. Firstly, it has been shown through SAPS analysis that most murders occur between people who know each other. So there's very little chance that the police can intervene timeously in such incidents, especially assaults, serious assaults and murders. Having said that, what has been happening in this year, we are going into an election year, and what has contributed to the spike in murder can be instance, it ties in with the first thing we said about communities losing trust in the police. There has been a lot of incidents of vigilantism where communities take the law into their own hands by apprehending suspects and seriously assaulting them, and some of these assaults end in murder. And also there have been, leading up to next year's election, there have been a lot of firstly infighting within the ruling party, where a lot of political opponents have been killed, and also a lot of fighting between different political parties. So you have an incident of vigilantism in the country, increasing incidents of vigilantism, and also political conflicts that lead to the rise in this, that contribute to the rise in these matters.
All right, Mr. Lebone, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there. We've run out of time. We're speaking to Cohen Lebone, crime analyst from the South African Institute of Race Relations. Thanks very much. Now to Nigeria, where at least 87 people have been killed in yet another attack by Boko Haram militants in northeastern Borno State. According to witness accounts, the militants were disguised in military uniforms and heavily armed during the Tuesday attack that set up checkpoints outside the town of Beni Sheikh and shot dead those who tried to flee, razing dozens of nearby buildings. Boko Haram, which wants to create an Islamic state across Nigeria, has waged a deadly insurgency since 2009. A state of emergency was declared in Borno in May, but attacks have increased despite massive military deployment. Borno State's Governor Kashim Shettima visited the scene on Thursday. He described the killings as barbaric and un-Islamic and pledged financial assistance to relatives of the victims. While Beni Sheikh was also the scene of fierce clashes earlier this month, which reportedly left 5 militants and 13 vigilante members dead. Let's now have a look at news-making headlines across the continent. A Roman Catholic nun in the Democratic Republic of Congo has been awarded the prestigious 2013 Nansen Refugee Award, which recognizes exceptional work done among refugees. The prize, given annually by the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, comes with a $100,000 cash reward, Sister Angelique was recognized for her work with displaced women and girls in the region, where she counsels refugees and helps them learn new skills. About 2,000 women and girls have gone through her training program at the Center for Reintegration and Development. Elsewhere, dozens of protesters gathered outside Morocco's Justice Ministry on Thursday. They were angered by the arrest of a journalist whose news website had a link to a video by North Africa's Al-Qaeda branch criticizing the kingdom. Alia Nuzla, the editor of Lacom.com, was arrested on Tuesday at his home. The Justice Ministry said the video was inciting acts of terrorism in Morocco. And in the eastern DRC, South African troops have provided access to their base in the town of Goma, where they're conducting a drill. Over 1,000 South African soldiers, along with Tanzanian troops, make up the UN's 3,000-strong intervention brigade. Under the auspices of the UN, the brigade has been given a strong peace enforcement mandate to seek out armed groups and neutralize them. Now, millions of Kenyans tune in every week to watch a political satire TV show called XYZ. The inanimate main characters are less than a meter tall, but observers say they're having a big impact on Kenya's political scene. CCTV's Maria Galang filed this report.
A show that caters to Kenya's thirst for entertainment and for robust political debate. By some estimates, 1 in 5 Kenyans watch the XYZ show. Among them, the country's decision makers.
We're behind the scenes here at the XYZ show, a show that has gained so much popularity and critical acclaim both here in Kenya and around the African continent, that even the very politicians it so brutally satirizes, like Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta here, are said to be glued to the screens every time it goes on. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. President.
Nice to meet you too. Where do you come from?
CCTV.
How will you pay for it?
There have been similar shows in Britain and France, and more recently South Africa.
Have they no conscience?
But for Kenya, XYZ shows how far the country has come in opening up the democratic space and making often difficult subjects accessible.
MC Fatcom na wenzangu wale wote sita. Hapa Hague tumefika. Nani wengine kama sisi?
Today we are actually shooting our 96th episode of the XYZ show, and today what we are doing on the set, we basically the president is getting a briefing from his kitchen cabinet. So we have the head of security, and we also have the head of the public service, basically the fellow in charge of all the cabinet secretaries. So basically he's trying to get a feel of what Kenyans think about his reign so far, the projects he has actually initiated so far, and basically trying to give him the feel of how the country is based on the ICC situation.
Filming can take up to 1 week. Creating a puppet can cost up to $7,000.
One puppet actually can go up to 1 month, depending on the character. There are some characters which are difficult to capture, but there are others which are a bit easier. They have their distinct features.
Hawa shahidi wanane hawangetokelezea. Mimi gosge nimetokelezea. Hapana mambo mengi nimetokelezea. Watu walinisete nikatokelezea.
But it's a winning formula. XYZ has recently been voted the best television series in Africa. And it's starting to gain attention outside Kenya too.
I really wanna live forever, forever and ever.
So we live life like a video. Long live Mugabe!
Maria Galang, CCTV, Nairobi.
Now, the latest in business coming up in just a moment, including